Welcome back to WorkWoman. Today we have a super fun guest. Dean Graziosi joined us this morning. We are still mid-quarantine. He is quarantined in his home in Scottsdale, Arizona. And before the episode started, we connected a little bit on the woes of building a house and the hot weather in Arizona come summertime. Dean, if you don't know him already, he is known for his real estate expertise. He is also a New York Times bestselling author, a speaker, and an entrepreneur. You are thoroughly going to enjoy today's episode. Dean, thank you so much for joining the Workwoman podcast. I am thrilled to have you here.
Well, it's good to be here. Good to be here. And you're going to be a neighbor soon. So that's good stuff.
It is going to be fun. For those of you who don't know, we currently live in Portland, Oregon, and we are building a house in Scottsdale, and Dean is in Scottsdale currently. How is the weather there?
It's starting to get a little hot, but it's all right. 100 here is no big deal. 100 in Portland or where it's humid is tough, but 100 here is no big deal. The midsummer 112, 115, that's a little rough, but you know what? The rest of the year is so nice. It's worth it. You're going to love it.
I can hardly wait. I can hardly wait. The whole house is like, it's been a long enough time where I think that it's a good thing with building a house. There's like absence makes the heart grow fonder kind of thing. It just takes so long that by the time it's there, you're just so ready.
You're going to appreciate it so much.
I hope so. I was not built to build a house. This is not something that I would ever do again. Have you built a house before?
Yeah, I built a bunch of them, and yeah, I'm with you on that. It's it's the pros and cons. You get to get all the things you love, but you got to put up the time and the patience.
Yes, exactly.
I want to tell you, my team works really diligent to make sure we align and do podcasts and interviews with people that are changing the world. So I want to share, I didn't know much about you until my team discovered you and shared what you're doing. And I got 2 pages on the impact you're making on the world. And I think it's really awesome that you're helping women and helping people get started, gain the capabilities. Because in today's world, especially with the shift, more than anything, we need the courage and the capabilities, and we need to move forward when we're uncomfortable, even though it's scary. And you can do that when someone's your guide, when someone's providing you a roadmap, and it's really awesome that you're doing that. So congratulations for all the impact you're making.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love that this podcast, this connection that we just made is happening during this time of such uncertainty, because it is something that you talk quite a bit about, and the idea of this courage muscle. So for those people who haven't heard you talk about the courage muscle, can you share a little bit more about your philosophy with that?
Yeah, especially in a shifting time. I mean, this is the craziest time in the world. I just want to share with you, if you're feeling a little uncertain, a little scared, not sure what's next, congratulations for being human. I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. I've been through 4 shifts in the economy. I was in business already for the dot-com bust in the late 80s. 9/11 shifted our world overnight. 2007, the Great Recession, as they call it. I've been through all of those, but never has there been a time where all of it's been stacked up, maybe since a world war, where we're not only worried about our finances, we're worried about an illness that could potentially hurt our family or friends. We're told to socially disconnect when we're social creatures. We need to be social. So when you stack all of those things on top of each other, it can cause uncertainty. It could cause, emotions that you're not used to. So that's normal and that's okay. But what's not okay is sitting around waiting for someone else to fix this for you. Sitting around waiting for your career to open back up, your job to open back up, someone else to give us stimulus money, or someone else tell us when we can go to work, or when we can feel better, or when this virus is better. If you're allowing the outside world to control your emotions or the decisions you make, that's when we feel uncertain on a whole nother level. When we realize that there's no Prince Charming coming to save any of us, that the only person that could fix this is us. When we know that our success or our failure is reliant on the decisions we make now, the seeds that we plant now that we can harvest later, it gives you this sense of freedom. Like, I'm not waiting for anybody anymore. I'm not waiting for permission. I'm not waiting for that internal voice to say, you're not, you're not an imposter anymore. You can do this. Like, don't wait for the confidence. Don't wait for permission. Work on the courage to just move forward, right? Courage is not taking action in the absence of fear. Courage is taking action when you're scared to death. Right? Think about the biggest breakthroughs in your life. They happened when you were so scared. When you were a kid getting on that roller coaster, scared to death, you got off cheering. right? Scared to death to start that relationship. Now you have your soulmate because you went through that fear. It's the same thing with starting or scaling a business. If you're scared to death, congratulations. These are the times in history when you need to be uncomfortable, but while you're uncomfortable, you still need to move forward. Because no matter what's going on in your life right now, I promise this too shall end. This COVID will be behind us eventually. This shifted economy will be behind us eventually. And the decisions we have to, or the choices we have to make is, who are we going to be when this is over? Are you going to be the person that was left behind because you got stuck in negative news and stuck binging on Netflix and stuck, having conversations with people talking about how bad the world is? Or are you going to be someone who gained capabilities? Now, if you're here, that means you're already somebody who wants to gain capabilities, right? You're already in the right swimming lane. So I would just share with you that this is when innovation can happen. This is when, creativity can happen if you decide. And that's, if there's anything I could share today, is it's not an easy time, but this is a time we have an unfair advantage because most people are going to focus on what's wrong. And if you can find what's right and evoke a courage muscle, you could be so far out in front when this is over.
I love that. And I read early this year that you said 2020 is the year of the woman entrepreneur. And I think when I first saw that, I was like, I saw it during this COVID time, and I was thinking, I wonder if he still feels this way. Like, I wonder if anybody is still thinking, this is my year, I'm going to capture this. And my gut tells me that, yes, you still absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I think I think I said it's the decade of the woman
A
entrepreneur.
decade.
It's the decade of, and I believe the year, the decade, but here's why. That's not just the statement. Listen, women have had a massive impact in my life and the reason I'm successful. So that's not just saying that because I'm being interviewed by a woman who's got some women listening. My mom and dad split when I was 3, and I watched my mom work 3 jobs to be a hustler to support my sister and I. My dad didn't help her out financially, and she struggled, but she did it. Simultaneously, my gram stepped up, and my grandmother was like a second mom. I lived half with my grandmother, half with my mom. These 2 women inspired me and motivated me. And my grandmother was she never went past 8th grade, but one of the smartest women I ever met in my life. And the little things she shared with me stuck with me. So I love seeing women get ahead. I love women entrepreneurs, but just because I love women entrepreneurs and have this affinity towards women doing great things. My wife is an amazing entrepreneur. My wife's a badass, for lack of a better word. When I met her, she was thriving in what she did. I love seeing that. But here's why I say this is the decade of the woman entrepreneur. The world is sick of the overnight wealth, the overnight losing getting a 6-pack, overnight fixing your relationships, the dudes with the Lamborghinis holding up the check telling you can get rich in 5 minutes. The world is just so sick of that. And the world, and I know this because I spend more in ads than most anyone you'll ever interview, the world is creating authenticity. The world is creating real and raw like never before. With all this crap going on with COVID and being scared and the messaging and not knowing where our world is, the last thing we need is, I'm just being honest, some dude telling you how to get rich, do 6 figures in 6 minutes. Like, we're so sick of that. And who has more inner authenticity, inner heart than women? Women, like, listen, my wife, my grandmother, my mother, I wrote down a couple things I wanted to share with you. Intuitiveness. You're born with another level of intuitiveness. You probably do this with your husband, with your family. As my wife, I could go to dinner with somebody that I think that guy's good. Yeah, I might do business with him. And my wife would be like, no, but that's not going to work out. I'm just telling you right now. And 100 out of 100 times, my grandmother, my mother, and my wife are right. Like, us as guys, we're blind to that. Like, something sparks our ego and we're like, no, this guy's good. And my wife's like, no, I think he's nice and we'll wish him well. You can even say a prayer for him, but we're not doing business with that guy. And she's always right, right? My wife says it like she feels it. She says what's on her mind and never does it in an insulting way. Like, I'll go to a restaurant or go someplace and my wife will be able to, with heart and compassion, say, no, listen, we ordered this and you brought us this. I'm so sorry. Where I'm like, there's just another level of heart and authenticity that you guys are born with. We have a 6-week-old. I have a 13, 11, and a 6-week-old. And I watch this kind of compassion on a level that only a woman and not just a mom, but any woman has. Okay, so how does that translate? Our world, in any business you want to start, especially if you're doing a virtual business, an online business, being a part of the digital economy, all of it, please listen to this, all of it starts with a relationship and communication. Now, if you want to you need to learn the tactical or have someone help you with, do you go on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube? Do I start a podcast? Do I get a following? Do I do paid ads? All of those things can feel overwhelming, but remember something, that's the science. You can go on YouTube and figure out how to book an ad on Facebook. You could find a course to show you how to run YouTube or create a YouTube viral sensation. You can learn all that. That's tactical, that's science, and it's teachable. What's not teachable is the art side, the relationship, the connection, the authenticity, the being real, to being intuitive, to knowing what people need in their hearts. That women, I believe, and I'm not trying to stereotype, this is correct. You're born with that. And if you think you have to be better on video, better at communicating, you're wrong. The world just wants the best version of you telling the truth. And if I look at every one of my businesses, I'm blessed to, start with nothing and have over 13 businesses and have more success than I ever imagined possible. All of it starts with a relationship with a client, whether you're selling face-to-face, online, through a podcast. And no one better than women in this decade. I believe I'm going to be right at the end of this decade. You're going to see more women doing bigger, better than ever before in history. And then the last part about that is I know, as far as women and men being equal in business, I know it's probably still not where it needs to be, but it's still better than it's ever been in any other time in history, right? So I think when you combine all that, you women are going to be pure fire.
Why do you think it's taken until 2020? Like, it's interesting that these things, like these natural elements of females, have always existed. Like when we talk about motherhood and the nurturing and the authenticity and the ability to really connect, that's always been there since the dawn of man. And yet now there is a time in our social climate where I totally agree with you, but it's interesting when you think, well, I wonder why it hasn't been this way in the past and why people were not as susceptible to thinking that female leaders and female business owners were as esteemed.
Well, there's probably a lot of reasons, but I would say like gut it was only a decade ago that what you and I are doing right now didn't exist.
Even 6 months ago, it was challenging. Like technology has moved so fast.
Yeah, our world has changed so much that if I ran into you, okay, women have a megaphone now, and you didn't before, right? Unless you had meetings or a woman wrote a book so you could understand her depth. It's like it was men dominated business in so many ways. And it's like, and they just, I don't want to say good old boys club, but that's just the way the world went for so long. Mm-hmm. But now you can't hold down women with a desire to do their own business or to impact the world or do something meaningful because you start a podcast, you get on Instagram, you get on Facebook, and you have such a good message. I mean, my dear friend, Jenna Kutcher, she's 27 years old. I love Jenna. Like, I'm her business coach as well. And I listen to her. And it's like, this is a girl that worked in a cubicle, quit, bought a $300 camera off of eBay and started a wedding photography business. Now she's got one of the top podcasts, the Gold Digger podcast. She's got a 7-figure plus information business. She's got a house in Hawaii, a house in the mountains. She's got her own, she's crushing it. And you know who she is? She's the most authentic woman ever. Right? She got done having a baby. She put on a few pounds, which every woman in the world does. She's not afraid to put a bikini on a month after and say, this is how you really look as a woman. And all of us are like, thank God, like authenticity. My other friend, Rachel Hollis, like Rachel's crushing it because she's just being the most real and raw woman. And the world is just so ripe and ready for your words and your messaging. And I just think it's time. And I don't know exactly why, but I would bet to say because you have a megaphone and you can attract an audience with no one's permission.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're totally right. And the hard part of being authentic is just not knowing how it's going to land, and not if you've never had a model, if you didn't have Jenna or if you didn't have Rachel before, the only way to do it was a very masculine way. And I think that still is a struggle in traditional business today, in teams today. There are these women leaders outside the world or outside your organization that you see on Instagram, that you see on Facebook, but inside the organization, I still think that women struggle with what does female leadership look like, because it is slightly different than how males go about doing it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And listen, I love these conversations because I always want to climb inside the mind of the like the feminine brain, like looking through that, like looking through those glasses, right? Because as a guy, I can try to analyze it, but coming through your lens. And here's one thing I would say is I've been in business for over 30 years. And sometimes, right, a man's world, right? I'd see a woman leader in a man's world, and it feels like, and again, I would love for you to tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I believe I see is women used to have to try to be masculine or be in a way to compete with the men head to head. And what I see right now is women get to be in their beauty, in their strength, in their power, while simultaneously being feminine, being them. And I think the world is recognizing that's what we all need. I mean, I believe over the next decade, we need a woman president. We do, here in America, because we need the world to see it through the eyes of a woman. And I look at my wife. My wife is the most feminine, amazing, beautiful woman you could imagine in every level possible. And that's what all men hopefully feel about their wives. But simultaneously, she's a businesswoman, knows how to get stuff done, and she doesn't have to emulate me. She doesn't have to be a man, like in a man's world. She could be a boss, a leader with feminine traits. And again, I'd love your opinion on that, but I'm seeing that more and more.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you. I think especially in places where there isn't a lot of corporate structure around you, it is easy for women to kind of to step out and to be leaders, but it feels like they have to step away from something that feels traditional and corporate in order to harness that because it's not already baked into the corporate framework at this point. Like there's still that struggle that a lot of people face, and you kind of have to say F off to that in order to really come into your own. And at some point it would be an amazing transition for that, not because corporate world, I mean, there's so much experience, there's so much value that you can give and also get in a traditional corporate structure. And so people just starting off their businesses on their own and not having some of that experience, I think ultimately for our economy, for overall learning opportunities, would be a miss over the course of 10, 20, 30 years as we look at how work will evolve and change.
Hands down, it's not going to be the corporate world that turns the world back around. It's going to be the small entrepreneurs that save this country, as almost every recession does. Corporations, they're so big and they have so many processes and systems, they get crippled. I mean, just watching 30 years in 4 different down markets, it's the wiry, creative, new and smaller entrepreneurs that really shift the world. And you just said something to think about. I'd love your opinion on this too, is if you come out of the corporate world and it's time to do your own thing, make sure you shed that skin, right? You may have been taught something wrong. You may have been taught to hide your weaknesses. You may have been taught that certain language patterns or like throw all that away and dig into your heart of who you really are. Because again, going back to authenticity, the world just wants you, not, and one thing I want to share, being authentic doesn't mean that you vomit up a story and leave people there. It means that you be authentic while simultaneously sharing the transition of how to go to another level. That's a really, and I know that's more tactical than big picture, but I'll watch somebody try to be authentic and they'll talk about all the things that went wrong and leave people there. People have enough of that of their own. They need to see how your mess became your message, how your mess became your journey, how your mess created your next level, because all of us have messes. And so many people think our messes are unique and they're holding us back when they're really the power to launch us to another level. And no matter what business you're in, again, model a Jenna Kutcher or a Rachel Hollis, they'll tell you their mess, but their mess became their message to go to a whole nother level.
So when you're crafting that story, if somebody doesn't feel like they've moved from the mess to the message, if they're still in the mess, do you recommend that people don't start sharing that before the message can be tied out?
They share the journey. I used to want to share my messes after I had fixed them. And that's a cool inspiration. Like, I need to get through this so I can help people. And what I realized over the last 5 years, especially, people want to go on the journey with you, especially if you're climbing, because listen, a lot of people feel stuck and they don't know where to start. And if they see you going through a divorce, going through a bankruptcy, going through losing a business, going through a messy breakup with a partnership, and you're fighting and gaining capabilities to go to the next level, they'll jump on with you. They want to go for that ride with you, because at home they might not have any support. The one amazing thing about social connection, right? We have social distancing, we have virtual connecting is, in most cases, if you're listening to a podcast like this, you're the rare one in your family. Most people settle. Most people just take the road least, the road everybody travels. If you're stepping out, want to start your own business, scale your own business, you might have a spouse, your husband might say, this isn't the right time, you're crazy. Your mom might be saying, this isn't the right time, they're crazy. And what I found over life, in all my life, is they're usually wrong. They might love you and want to protect you, but they're wrong. But they're also simultaneously feeding your self-doubt, your inner doubt, that imposter syndrome. Like, all that negativity feeds it enough where you just play a little small. And I'd encourage you not to listen to that. Remember, they don't make statues of critics. They make statues of the crazy women, the crazy men, the ones that were the dreamers, the ones that reached for too ambitious goals. So you have to kind of shut that voice down while simultaneously just keeping your head down, gaining capabilities, and pushing forward.
Love that. Okay, as I look at my notes, one of the things that I wrote down that you said earlier, I didn't want to interrupt you, is the amount of money that you spend on ads and the things that you're seeing, the trends that you're seeing with authenticity, and how this relates to women being authentic and creating the message through their mess. What kind of trends are you seeing with ads? Can you share with this audience?
Yeah. So if you think about this, the thoughts you had just, 14 weeks ago are completely different than the thoughts you have right now, right? If we were doing this podcast 16 weeks ago and we talked about, all right, what's everybody wanting here? Everything would be aspirational. I want to get the second house or the new house. I want to retire my husband. I want to have more freedom. I want money and time control in my life. That would have been the conversation. I know, because I'm always online. I'm always going live. I'm always reading comments. Now, in today's world, right this very minute, the mindset of the world has shifted. People are talking about being safe, secure, being okay, taking care of your family. There's some of you who lost the job or are not getting paid right now, and you're realizing, I'm never going back to that crap. I didn't like it when I was doing it. It's not safe. My family, my college professor told me that this was the way to security, and that's not secure. So right now, even though it's uncomfortable and I'm scared, I'm going to start my own thing. Where do I go? How do I start? Who do I listen to? Right? So the only reason I'm sharing that is because the conversations are completely different. And what I see with most people is they don't shift their messaging to match the conversations going on in the mind of their prospects. If you want an easy term to remember forever, is what is the conversation currently going on in the mind of your prospect, your potential client? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What desires do they have right now? Not last month or the month before. What fears do they have right now? Not last month or the month before. And you want to enter that conversation. I see ads because I run so many ads. I've been doing it for over 2 decades. I see people running ads that they shot prior to COVID. And I think it's just so disrespectful, and it's wrong, and it doesn't land, and they're wondering why it's not working. Is because people are in a different mindset. Just listen, if you haven't started a business yet and you're planning on it, find somebody who's the closest possible to you, in your category, in the business you want to do. Find a Facebook group that would have women or men in that group that would be potential clients for you in the future, and read hundreds and hundreds of their comments. What are they saying right now? That's what you have to do. I've read tens of thousands of comments from my students. I know what they fear. I know what they desire. I know what they want. So I can always be on that level. Meet people where they are. And you don't have to overthink what an ad looks like. You're just having a conversation with someone at this moment.
So fascinating. I didn't even think about what is happening with the ad world right now. And there's also the other challenge that people, especially large businesses at this moment, I'm sure have had to pivot a significant amount of their ads to what's happening right now. However, they don't have the ability to have large content crews to shoot ads. Like, everything does have to do with this, or you could do stock imagery as well. For those of you listening, I just did a selfie hand. But like the way that you're connecting with people can't be shot and perfectly produced in the same way that it did before, or you can continue to use what you had before, but that likely won't land either.
Right.
And so
Right.
you're seeing.
And the other thing too is, and I noticed this with women, because I've done a lot of women events. I was just at Rachel Hollis's, right before everything closed up, there was 8,000 business women or either in business or wanting to be in business, just an incredible crowd of women. Um, and I was a month before with 2,000 women. And I asked one thing: who in this room is ready to go to another level? All ready. Who in here has a business or wants to start one? All raise their hand. Who's ready to just dominate and scale? Cheering. Who in here is a little apprehensive or a little scared to sell? 90% of the hands go up. And one thing I see, and maybe you've seen it different, Heather, is for some reason, I think because of the compassion, the heart-centered, the authenticity, women seem to have a little more of a disconnect or a fear of selling. Do you notice that in
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's what I want to share with everybody. And this should be a shift. I'm going to share an example. So I'm at this event, all these women, amazing women, raise their hand. I pick a woman out, the second row. And I said, so you're in business? Yes. I said, what do you do? I said, you're in business, but you don't like selling. She goes, yes. I said, okay, so tell me what you do. And she's like, okay, when I gave birth to my first, I went through postpartum and I was depressed and feeling off. And she's like, I hated it so much that I created a framework and I got myself out of it. And I felt amazing. So now I coach other women after they have birth to avoid postpartum, to feel sexy again, to have their husbands look at them, to feel empowered, to make it feel like the whole world's not about a baby, it's about your family. And she goes, I created this framework and I love getting women on fire and making them look beautiful. And she's telling me this and she's lighting up, she's glowing as she's staring this. I said, so tell me a story about someone. She goes, oh my God, this one client, she was this and she was sad and she was this. And she looked amazing and her husband was in shock and she's feeling amazing. And then I said, but you don't like selling. And her whole face, everything, she says, no, I feel bad marketing. I said, okay, but what if you looked at it this way? I said, there are women out there who need you. I said, what if you look through the lens of love what you do so much that you know that you're actually screwing people over if you don't get their money? And she's like, I don't understand. I said, okay, right now there's a woman out there, hundreds, but let's just pick one, who's on her way to postpartum depression. She doesn't know how to handle her emotions. She's crying every day. And because you're afraid to step up, because you're afraid to market, she's never going to see your ad. She's never going to see your promotion. And there's only two things that can happen to that poor woman. She's going to be depressed for the next 3 to 6 months because you're not helping her. Or she's going to go to a competitor that doesn't care as much as you do. I watched tears come out of your eyes when you're talking about your last client. So if you don't get good at messaging, you don't get good at marketing, you're screwing over all the women right now who need you. And I just watched a whole audience. It was way longer. It was an hour presentation. The whole audience shifted. I said, love it so much that you're not selling. You're providing an answer. You're providing a solution. You're providing value. And you know, the only way you get to help them is if you obsess and get good at marketing and sales. And as a woman, you don't have to do the hype. You don't have to do a pitch ad. Live in your heart. Live in your authenticity. Live in your compassion. And I just watched a whole audience and her change. So I just wanted to give that message to all of you that when you decide to go in business or you're already in business, don't feel bad about selling. Feel bad if you don't get someone to say yes. And it'll just give you a different perspective.
Well, and people shouldn't create products or work for organizations where they can't feel that way, where they are preventing themselves from really being advocates. If you aren't an advocate of whatever it is that you're doing, you really should stop working at that job. You should start your own thing, whatever that looks like for you. But I think so many business owners don't actually look at their team members. We have this, and it's a filter that I run with any team that comes on board with us. You have to really believe in the product that we sell. So if you don't believe in it, or if you've never watched it, if you haven't gone through the trainings, if you haven't actually been a consumer of our product, there's no way that you can feel good about selling. And even if you tell me that you are the greatest salesperson in the world, that you're going to make us millions of dollars because you are the best closer, it doesn't matter if you've never even done the due diligence in order to actually see what my product looks like. And so that's always a question that I have when we're interviewing salespeople, because I'm not interested in how great your skills are if you've always been kind of a sleazy salesperson who doesn't really believe in the things, or that you're just kind of off in your own category of I can do anything.
Yeah, so true. And people ask me all the time, it's like, how have you stayed relevant for so long? How do you sell so good? What's your sales strategy, your sales tactic? I honestly don't have a sales strategy. I don't have of course there's a strategy. I've been doing it for 30 years, in sales, but I really do care. And I told people, when you care at a level that you know that you're hurting people if they don't get it, you automatically become better at persuasion, right? If you're selling cigarettes, I don't care how good a salesperson you are, you know deep down you're sleazy. If you're selling booze to an alcoholic, if you're pushing someone to gamble who's got a gambling problem, I don't care if you're a good salesman, you're sleazy. It's a tactic, it's a strategy. But if you're selling something to cure someone, to stop them from smoking, to make their life better, it's a different emotion, it's a different flow, it's a different vibe that comes out of your body and your being. So I couldn't agree more of what you said. You got to go through it. You got to love it. And if you don't, it doesn't mean you quit today what you're currently doing, but transition, because the next 5 years is going to happen no matter what. So you might as well start working on the things where you could be completely aligned in 6 months, a year, or 5.
Yeah, absolutely. Dean, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of WorkWoman. It was a pleasure having you.
Oh, this was great to be here. Appreciate you. Keep up the good work.